guys, so this is going to be a little different of a book review. This is going to be my first Bible talk because the majority of this month what I've been reading is the book of Jeremiah, and it has been actually a lot of fun, a lot of fun. Let's dive in and let's talk about scripture. So for me, I already told you that I love reading. A good portion of what I love about reading is encompassed in this book. I absolutely love reading classics and mysteries and Agatha Christie. You know, I love getting to read some of the modern stuff and just getting swept away in a story. Love the worlds of Narnia and Lord of the Rings and just those really well written, fleshed out worlds. And what I also love is the incredibly fleshed out world that is in this book. And this book means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And for me, it is home. This is home to me. This is where I come when I need comfort, when I need clarity, when I need guidance. This and praying is what stabilizes me. And it's the only thing that gets me through anything when it comes to anything. But not only that, this book is filled with so many amazing stories. And I almost hesitate using the term stories because that makes it seem like it's fiction, and it's not. You know, when you read like Lord of the Rings, Pride and Prejudice, ACOTAR, the hardcore fantasy stuff that you just absolutely love, and it's a world that you just get caught up in, and then you see the characters and they delve into the writings of that world, and they understand the magic systems, and they understand how things work and the history and everything like that. Why this is so incredibly exciting is because this is our reality. This talks about truths of our spiritual life, of our physical life, of what's going on in the world, what has gone on in the world, and what's going to go on in the world. So to me, it is so incredibly exciting to delve into these pages and to decipher what is actually being said. Having said that, I know that there's some people that might view this as a bit boring. It is anything but. This book has been passed down so long, and it's been read so many times by so many different people in so many different contexts that sometimes we forget just what is in these pages. To me, that is like a life goal, a life study for me, is to dig. Same as an archaeologist digs, you know, in the dirt to uncover bones. You have to kind of dig through the Old English. You have to dig through the translations to get to the heart of some of these stories. You have to do some digging and some detective work. It's some effort. It takes some effort, but it feeds your soul. This feeds your soul, this feeds your spirit, and it makes you stronger. And it's just a beautiful thing. So yeah, that's kind of my little mini rant on why I read the Bible, why I dig so much into Bible study. I wanted to start out by kind of showing you guys some of what it is that I do. I love marking up my Bible. I absolutely love it. That is just me. I know that there's some people that really, they don't want to mark it much, and I get that. I totally get that. But to me, a well-used Bible, if I see a Bible that's been well-used and falling apart, I know that it has been thoroughly used, like within an inch of its life, and I just love that. Like I said, I like to mark things. I like to make it so that when I go back, I know that I have read this, I've gone over this, and I try to mark it in a way that makes it a little bit easier to digest the next time I come through. For Jeremiah, I chose two main colors to use, and that is teal and yellow. Those were my Jeremiah colors. So I use different pens and I use different highlighters specifically for my Bible. These highlighters I found, and they actually work really, really well. They are zebra. They're not super thick ink. So you can kind of see it's lighter, but it doesn't bleed through the pages. There's that. And then if you look on, the next page, it doesn't leak through as bad as some other highlighters, because some highlighters, oh my goodness, you see it like 2-3 pages away, and that's no, because I like marking it and I like using it, but I don't like abusing it and I don't like damaging it. Very different. very different things. So I don't have a pack to show you, but these are pens that I've used in my Bible for years now. They are archival ink, Pigma Micron. But you can get these in all different colors. I've gotten multiple packs. They've got a bright pack, kind of a more darker colors as well, brown, blue, black, purple, and those work really well. Okay, yeah, an axe. So I marked like right there, and then if I flip to the next page, you can't really see. You can even see I marked on both sides with it, and then it doesn't shine through the page. It doesn't show through the page, which is great if you want to underline something, make it pop a little bit as you're studying. Another thing that I found, and I actually got this, my parents got this for my husband and I for Christmas. This is the Rose Handbook of Bible Charts, Maps, and Timelines. So we got this for Christmas. I think you can actually just get it from Walmart. What I specifically really was looking at is the Kings and Prophets lineup. But what's really cool is when you come across a place that the Bible keeps mentioning, and you can tell it's prominent. And then when you look up a map and just, I'm very visual, seeing like the layout of the land and where people lived. And when it says like he went to this place and he went to this place, to actually being able to see where he went, that to me is really cool. I mean, it's the same as like, ACOTAR, Lord of the Rings, books like that, they have maps a lot of times in the beginning of the books to give you an idea as to the layout of the land and what it is they're dealing with. And it's the same idea. It's just cool. It's just really cool. So another thing that I love to do when I am delving into the Bible is I will listen to commentaries from Bible teachers that I really trust and respect. And the main one that I go to, his name is Chuck Missler. He unfortunately has passed away at this point, but he was an awesome Bible teacher. I have been listening to his Jeremiah series, and he delves into the Hebrew, the Greek. He was like a chemical engineer or something like that. So he was a very, very intelligent man, and a very, very sweet guy too. So anyway, let's get into it. So this month, this January, I was reading Jeremiah. And it is one of the prophetic books of the Bible. It's one of the major prophets. But this was actually a very, very cool book. I know a lot of people, everyone talks about Isaiah for, the prophet book. And don't get me wrong, Isaiah is awesome. But this one actually captured my attention, especially since the time period. So set the stage a little bit. In case you don't know the history of Israel back in biblical times, you have the nation of Israel. Well, at some point, the nation of Israel splits into two. You have the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. The northern kingdom is called Israel. They kept the name Israel. The southern kingdom is called Judah. As the timeline goes, Israel falls first. And then we're left with the southern kingdom, which is Judah. And that is actually where Jeremiah comes in. You have a long string of kings that led Israel and Judah, separate kings. The thing that you have to remember, I hear a lot about the God of the Old Testament and how merciless he was and mean and angry and stuff like that. You have to read through the Old English. You have to look and see what was really going on. It wasn't that they messed up and then he struck them with lightning. It wasn't just that, they forgot to pray or they were thinking a lot about this other God. That's not what was going on. You were talking about hundreds of years, generation after generation, of the most horrible, abominable practices that you can imagine happening in God's temple, in God's house, in Israel, which was supposed to be his nation, his people, were practicing these horrible things. And I don't want to go into detail because honestly, it's nasty. But there was abuse, sacrificing of children, and not just quick and clean. I'm talking painful. And this is the kind of stuff that was going on for hundreds of years. And God sent prophet after prophet after prophet to his people saying, hey, stop this. Don't do this. These innocent people that are getting killed, it hurts me. It's crying out to me. I've got to do something about this. So it wasn't just a knee-jerk reaction. If you really look and see the timelines that happen in the Bible, it might seem quick because it's put down on text. But if you really delve out what was going on, God is the same today as he was yesterday, as he's going to be ever. He doesn't change. He hasn't changed. He is a loving God. God is love. If you were back during those times and seeing what was going on, you would get it. Like, it would make sense. So anyway, going off on that rant, that's where we find ourselves. We're in the southern kingdom of Judah. There's been generations and generations of these kings and these leaders of the Israeli people and the Israeli people themselves that have been doing these practices that are just not good. And in the book of Jeremiah, it makes it very, very clear that that is why he lets Babylon take them over and take them into exile, because they have sinned for so long. And when we use the word sin, we've heard it so much that it's really lost the meaning behind it. But just remember that when I say that these people have sinned, it's stuff that today even we would be like, yeah, that is not good. That needs to stop. So anyway, there's been king after king after king that is just going after these pagan gods that have horrible practices until you reach King Josiah. And King Josiah, he became king at a very, very young age. He actually became king when he was a kid. And he was a brief respite in the midst of all of this horribleness that was going on. He turned Israel around during his reign. He tore down all the pagan altars. He got rid of all of the horrible sacrifices. He turned back to God. And the funniest thing to me is, in the midst of his reign, there were priests that found God's book of the law. They found his commandments. So that shows just how much they were not following what God told them to do, because they had lost the instruction book to the point where, like, they didn't even realize it was lost. And so when they found it and they saw all of the stuff that they weren't doing and all the stuff that they were doing that they shouldn't have been doing, King Josiah just really did a big turnaround during his time. But unfortunately, it was not enough to really turn the entire nation, because as soon as his reign ended, the kings that came after him just immediately went back into the old ways. And then that, kind of just takes the nation that way as well. Yeah, so that's the stage that we're at with Jeremiah. That's where he is. And this isn't necessarily I'm not going to go break it down like chapter by chapter or anything like that. I just wanted to share with you what I found in Jeremiah, what I did, and that kind of thing. So first I went through and I read, and then I highlighted in, like I said, teal and yellow, and kind of the more major things that stuck out to me, I did in teal. But the thing that you have to realize about Jeremiah that was very interesting, and you kind of had to, this is why I kept this book open here, so that I could jump back to the years and the timelines and the kings, because I thought this was cool. But I must have been in the mood to do a little bit, extra like detective work. Jeremiah is not in chronological order. The chapters don't always go in chronological order. But at the beginning of each chapter, for the most part, unless it's flowing into the next one, it lets you know when it's taking place. And it lets you know whether this is a word from the Lord directly that Jeremiah is saying, because it will say, a word of God given to Jeremiah in the year of da-da-da, of the reign of da-da-da, of the month of, so you know exactly when it is that he has given these prophetic words. And that is one of the things that I highlighted in the beginning of each chapter, was the time that we are at, who it was that was talking, whether it was God, whether it was Jeremiah, or whether it was somebody else. Because there were a few times that we were getting things from like the king's perspective, his prince's perspective, some of the other prophets that were in Israel at the time. All of the other prophets in Judah at the time were prophesying peace and saying God says that he's going to be fine with us and he's going to save us, because he always had in the past. But the thing is, God was not actually talking to those prophets. They were not actually following the ways of God, and they were not actually doing what they were supposed to do. They were just being in the role of prophet and saying what the people wanted to hear. Yeah, that does not end well for them. You don't want to do that, because at this point, God has basically had it. And you see also when it said in here that it's not just that the people didn't realize what they were doing; they knew. And then there were multiple times when the different kings came to Jeremiah and said, "Hey," secretly said, "Hey, well, what's the word of the Lord?" And he would just repeat, "Babylon's going to conquer us. It's, we need to just basically submit to it, because at this point, this is the punishment that we get for what we've been doing. And yeah, so Jeremiah was not a popular guy in Judah. He got thrown into prison, he got thrown into dungeons, and ultimately, like, overall, he was taken care of, because God sent different people to get him out, and to make sure he had food and that kind of thing. So anyway, that's where we are with Jeremiah. The city of Jerusalem is still in the southern kingdom for Judah, and it gets put under siege, I think, like 3 times from Babylon. So you have these battles and these wars and these kings, and the politics going on seem to be basically Egypt or Babylon, but between the two. And there were kings that were very pro-Egypt, but that's not the way that God was telling them that they was going to happen, which ultimately it didn't, because he knew Babylon was going to be taking them over. And so you had Egypt versus Babylon and the Chaldeans, and just a whole bunch of stuff. So overall, that's what's going on. On a more personal note, when it comes to Jeremiah himself, there's stories specifically from his POV. Even just from the get-go, when he was first called, he was called at a young age. And I think this is going off of what Chuck Missler said. He said he was about 20 years old. But what's interesting and something I love is he has a conversation with God when God calls him. It is chapter 1, and it starts with verse 4. Then the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. And before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee, and I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. Then said I, Ah, Lord God, behold, I cannot speak, for I am a child. Now, that word child, it doesn't actually mean kid, but what it actually means is he felt he was immature, he was young, he wasn't experienced, he didn't know enough to be able to do this. Then it goes on, but the Lord said unto me, Say not, I am a child, for thou shalt go to all that I shall send thee, and whatsoever I command thee, thou shalt speak. I don't know, I love those personal glimpses into the humanity of what was going on, of like, God comes to this young man, and the guy was basically like, God, I can't do this. I don't know enough. It's just this the little story nuggets I just absolutely love. So then you go through the different chapters, and Jeremiah basically is a prophet to Judah up into the exile into Babylon, and even throughout. And I've heard it said that Jeremiah is called the weeping prophet. There was definitely a lot of sadness and remorse in these pages. It's not necessarily the happiest of books in the Bible, but I find it fascinating just to see this time and how it was and what they went through, because you have the fact that these people have been doing this for so long, but there's also just such a deep sorrow that Jeremiah feels, and honestly probably the entire nation of Israel feels going into this, that this once great nation that the Lord loves, that was God's chosen people, has come to this, and it's going to be desolate and destruction and no joy, no mirth, no laughter, just despair, because they're getting conquered. There were a couple of chapters that do some pretty cool comparisons to get the Lord's point across, and one that is quite popular, I believe, was Jeremiah 18, where he talks about the potter's house. So in chapter 18, the word which came to Jeremiah from the Lord, saying, Go down to the potter's house, and there I will cause thee to hear my words. So God sends Jeremiah to the potter's house and basically shows him how the potter is making his pots and his vases, and there was one that was marred or damaged, and so the potter made it anew and was comparing that to how he wanted to do it for Israel, and that kind of thing. So just really cool little tidbits like that. Oh, I loved this too. Jeremiah 23. 23. Look at that. Jeremiah chapter 23, verse 23. God is talking, and he says, Am I a God at hand, saith the Lord, and not a God afar off? Can any hide himself in secret places that I shall not see him, saith the Lord? Do not I fill heaven and earth, saith the Lord? And so he's ranting a bit. He's ranting a bit, basically saying, like, I see all the stuff that you're doing. But I love finding tidbits like that in these prophetic books, even when it's not necessarily the most positive of books, because what is it that we just learned? What is it that he just said? God is not just sitting up in heaven afar off. He's not just far away. He's not like, you don't send up like a letter, or a prayer isn't like, on a dove and it reaches him and then he unfolds it and reads it. No, he's here. He's right next to you. He's right next to me. He fills the space. He fills heaven and earth. He is everywhere. He's with you all the time. You're never alone. Even if it feels like you're alone, you're never alone, because he's always with you, because he's God. And that I love, and I find so comforting, because we feel really, really, really lonely sometimes, and sometimes we feel abandoned, and we might forget about God, but he never forgets about us, and he is always loving us. He's always there. He's always hoping for the best for us. Yeah. Anyway, you can find some really, really cool truths revealed in some of these in the midst of a completely different speech going on. He slips these in, and I love it. Yep. And that, man, he got further down, verse 29 said, "Is not my word like as a fire, saith the Lord, and like a hammer that breaketh the rock in pieces?" It's just so good. Like I said before, it's not the happiest of books in the Bible. It definitely is predicting doom and destruction, but I would say it's one of the more exciting ones. At least I feel like it is at the moment, because you get a glimpse, an inside glimpse, as to what is going on in this nation as it's about to be taken over and besieged, and then the inhabitants put into exile. And what's fascinating too is God warns them the entire way. He tells them exactly what's going to happen. Jeremiah tells them, hey, we're going to be conquered by Babylon. It's going to be 70 years. And God has him get like a yoke from like oxen, the cattle that have yokes on their back, visually. And Jeremiah wore it for a while. And actually that was a fun part. That was kind of a fun part, because it was in Jeremiah chapter 28. And basically there's this like prophet battle showdown that goes on, because Jeremiah has been wearing apparently this yoke to signify the fact that they were going to be under the yoke of Babylon, because the Lord told him to do this. And he sent the different yokes to different kings and princes to get the message across. And like, can you imagine doing that? Like, they were so upset with him. They're so angry with him. But he was doing what the Lord told him to do. And this prophet in chapter 28, Hananiah. Yeah, Hananiah doesn't go well with him. He attacks Jeremiah. He basically is like, you're lying, and thus saith the Lord, we're going to be fine. And yeah, to the point where like they're basically verbally sparring. They're verbally going at it, and then it escalates to physical, because this Hananiah guy takes the yoke off Jeremiah and physically breaks it, and is like, thus saith the Lord, even so will I break the yoke of the king of Babylon. Jeremiah basically just went away. He didn't even combat him at that point. And then the Lord told Jeremiah basically to go back and tell Hananiah, the guy that broke the yoke, the false prophet, "Hear now, Hananiah," this is verse 15 in chapter 28. "Hear now, Hananiah, the Lord hath not sent thee, but thou makest this people to trust in a lie. Therefore, thus saith the Lord, behold, I will cast thee from off the face of the earth. This year thou shalt die, because thou hast taught rebellion against the Lord." So Hananiah the prophet died the same year in the 7th month. I feel like the word rebellion and rebelling has been glorified in our society, and sometimes rightly so, because sometimes there are things that we do need to balk against because it's not true, even though the word has kind of a glamorous tone to it that we've given to it in our society. Keep in mind that if there's a good way to rebel, there's also a bad way to rebel as well. It's not always the glamorous side of things to do that. Yeah, and then he even tells him that after 70 years, this is chapter 29, verse 10, "After 70 years be accomplished at Babylon, I will visit you and perform my good word towards you in causing you to return to this place." Oh, yep. And then Jeremiah 29:11, You probably have heard this one. This is a pretty popular one. For I know the thoughts that I think towards you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end. Then shall ye call upon me, and ye shall go and pray unto me, and I will hearken unto you. And ye shall seek me and find me, when ye shall search for me with all your heart. These are verses that are usually used for encouragement and love, and to show that the Lord is always on your side, basically, always rooting for you. And these were verses that he spoke in the middle of all the stuff going on, and the fact that the people had been so atrocious and so horrendous, and he always brings back hope. He's got a hope. Oh, another plot twist, potentially why Book of Jeremiah is out of order. Although, in all honesty, that's what Chuck Missler said. But I feel like at this point, if the Lord didn't set it to a proper order towards the beginning of the formation of this Bible, I feel like there's a reason. I feel like there's some reason that they are in the order that they are in. That's just my personal feel towards it. Because it would be pretty easy, considering each chapter outlines specifically the time it's talking about. It would have been fairly easy to kind of put it in a chronological order. But it was never done. And the fact that it was never done gives me pause and makes me wonder if there's more to it than that. But anyway, in chapter 30, the Lord has Jeremiah write all of his prophecies and all of his words and everything down in a book. But the problem is, go a little bit further, chapter 36, they write all of the words down into a book, as I said, but unfortunately, so they read the words out and they are heard by the princes, who take him to the king. And actually, the princes, bless their hearts, they tried to bring it to the king in a way that he would accept it. Nah, he had them bring the scroll, and after they read a couple of pages, he burned the scroll. Wouldn't listen. They tried to tell him not to. He wouldn't listen. So the original Jeremiah book scroll was burned, and so then I think it's just like in the next chapter, pretty soon after that, God basically just tells him, hey, write it down again. So he writes it down again, or he has it written down again, because he has a gentleman secretary guy do it for him. But what's really fun is you go back to chapter 32. It's a very interesting thing that happened, because if you know Revelation a little bit, there's a point in Revelation where it talks about the lion and the lamb. And there's this scroll, I believe, with 7 seals. And it basically says, who is worthy to open the scroll? And no one was. No one in heaven, no one on earth, no one under the earth, but the lamb that was slain, the lion of the tribe of Judah. Jesus was the only one that was worthy to open the scroll that's in Revelation. It's cool. It's just so much more to it than any of that. But there's really cool. In Jeremiah chapter 32, a very weird thing happens, a very interesting thing happens, and it has to do with Jeremiah and then his uncle. The Lord tells Jeremiah that his relative is going to want to sell him some property. I did not pick up on this, but Chuck Missler pointed it out in his study. The reason this was so unique was because during this chapter, during this time, the land had been conquered by Babylon already. It was not able to be sold. The guy did own it, but it was already conquered. The Lord told Jeremiah to purchase the land from his relative, and Jeremiah knew he was never going to be able to take possession of the land. He was already an older man at that point, and he was not going to make it 70 years to then come and get the land after the exile had been finished. But what was fascinating is it goes into detail. Apparently the practice at the time is they would do 2 scrolls, one sealed and one not sealed. And the one that was not sealed had the instructions for where the one that was sealed was located and how to open it. And that had to do with the deed. It was the land deed and that kind of thing. And that it sounded very similar to the bit in Revelation, where there was a scroll that was sealed and could only be opened by certain people, because this deed will only be able to be opened by Jeremiah's offspring. So, I don't know specifically what all that means, but it's really interesting to see even the historical context, potentially, of what Revelation might have been talking about, when it came to a sealed scroll, what it might have been potentially alluding to, or just how the society worked. I just find it really cool when stuff links up like that. I love this verse. I love this verse. Jeremiah 33, verse 3. Call unto me, and I will answer thee, and show thee great and mighty things which thou knowest not. I That's a promise. That's a promise. That's why I love digging into the scriptures, and I love doing it with the Holy Spirit, because he loves doing this alongside me and you. Oh, I love this comparison. Okay, so God basically is making comparisons of he will never break his covenant. He says it twice, but basically the idea is, and I'll read a little bit here. So Jeremiah chapter 33, verse 20. Thus saith the Lord, if ye can break my covenant of the day and my covenant of the night, and that there should not be day and night in their season, then may also my covenant be broken with David, my servant, that he should not have a son to reign upon his throne. Yada, yada, yada. And it says it again further down, verse 25, if my covenant be not with day and night, and if I have not appointed the ordinances of heaven and earth, then will I cast away the seed of Jacob and David, my servant. Now, it's not saying if we can somehow mess up day and night, then the covenant will be broken. It's not what's being said here. He's basically saying the biblical version of, does a dog bark? Okay, so a dog barks, so this is true. And it's basically saying that day and night would have to stop before the Lord would break his covenant. When God makes a promise, he keeps it. He just does. It's like it's automatic. There's no question. If he's made a promise, if he's said something, then that's how it is. So those are just some tidbits that were kind of fun that jumped out at me when it came to Jeremiah. I will say this, you do kind of have to be in the right mood. It's the same that I tell people for when it comes to like Jane Austen and Pride and Prejudice and that kind of thing. If you're in a really snappy, super adventurous mood, you're going to have to dig a little bit to find that adventure, but it is there. And if you are in the right mood, so good. What's really cool about this is you can pray and ask the Lord to put you in the right mood. And that's a thing. He gives you the desires of your heart. So that's a thing that he can do. So if you do want to dig into the Bible and you just don't feel super motivated, pray and ask the Lord for a heart for it, for motivation. And it can be a lot of fun. It's just a lot of fun. So yeah, so basically with Jeremiah, what we're doing is we are with the people of Judah and the Israelites through this time when they are under siege and they are taken into exile into Babylon. And of course, that leads into the stories of Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and the fiery furnace and the lion's den and all of that stuff that happened in Babylon and Nebuchadnezzar and all of that stuff. And then I know that there's other prophets that were also prophesying about the same time, but in different locations. And so I'm probably going to flow into Ezekiel next, going to be going across some of the same ground, I think, but I believe he is prophesying from a different location. I think he actually goes into exile, whereas Jeremiah stayed with the people in Judah, I believe, in that land. There's so much depth. There's so much depth. You could go so much deeper into this than just the little bit of histories and stories and nuggets that I pulled out. But I also wanted to show you that, like, there's some really cool stories in here. And there's some really cool action sequences and characters that you care about. I don't know. You start to kind of care about the characters. Like Jeremiah, bless his heart. He was called to be a prophet of the Lord and he was a young man. He was going against basically his whole nation. What they were thinking and believing and standing for the truth that he knew was true and trying to warn them that, hey, this is coming. This is what's going to happen. And he stayed true to it. And he was thrown in prison and he was thrown in dungeons and he had to go through the sieges. And he was accused of desertion. He was accused of lying. They tried to kill him multiple times and God kept him safe. It's just very exciting and adventurous. And if we approach some of these books the same way that we approach some of these other reads that we do, with the same passion and the same idea of this is a beautiful world with its own culture and its history, and it's rich with context and meaning and double meaning and layers upon layers of stuff that can be, discovered and delved out, the same that we have for certain books that we've read, you will not be disappointed. You will not be disappointed. The thing that makes this even more intriguing is the fact that this is not a fictional story. This is not a fictional story. This is reality. This is the world we live in. This is our life. If you want to know what's going on in your life, in your world, it's in here. It's in here. And I know that not everybody is set up to be able to read and digest books like us bookish people, us bookie girls or whatever. But if that is a passion of yours, that's a gift. And if you point it in this potential direction, there's a lot that you can dig out. There's a lot that you can discover. Anyway, that is my 2 bits, and that is what really gets me excited. And so I'm going to dig into Ezekiel next when it comes to this. And so I'll probably eventually do another video like this one talking about Ezekiel and his perspective of things. And if this is something that interests you guys, please comment, let me know. If it is something that interests you, I would love to talk more about it because I love this topic. If you have questions, ask them. I might not have the answers, but I can direct you to resources that you can dig into. I hope that something in this ignited a little bit of a curiosity or interest to delve into some of these books in the Bible that maybe you glazed over before. Yeah, let this be your sign that if you've been wanting to dig deeper into the Bible, but have been a little weary to do so, jump in, because when you're a Christian, you have the Holy Spirit. He will guide you. He will teach you. And if you don't know Jesus as your Savior, and you don't have that assurance, you can today. Just ask Him. Just tell Him, forgive me, and you can have it. I'll pop a couple links down in my description to answer stuff like that. And but yes, please, if you have questions about the Bible, Jesus, God, I might not be able to answer them fully, but I will do the best that I can. I hope you had fun. I hope that this triggered a little bit of curiosity in you, and I hope that you will join me next time. Bye.